Welcome to Playing on the Edge Radio, Radical Change with Ease, with Master Healer Megan Edge and Dr. Pat. This is a space for real conversations about what it means to heal, grow, and transform without losing yourself along the way. Here we explore the edges of change, grief, identity shifts, spiritual awakening, burnout recovery, transformation, and the quiet return to belonging. Each episode blends intuitive insight, practical tools, and meaningful spiritual perspectives to help you reconnect with your inner wisdom and navigate life's transitions with more ease, courage, and self-trust. If you're ready to come home to yourself and discover that radical change doesn't have to be hard, you're in the right place. Welcome, everybody. I am so excited for this episode of Playing on the Edge, Radical Change with Ease, and I'm so excited to be here with my dear friend, Dr. Pat.
Yeah.
Pat, we've been doing this for such a long time, and every conversation we have is so meaningful and so insightful, and I get goosebumps when I say this, because it's so true that we're able to go into spaces that we don't normally go into when we have these conversations. And this conversation today, oh my gosh, I'm already getting emotional. Wow. Being on the edge of worth it, being worth it, being worth it. And what does that look like? And where does that come from? And we're going to go into a lot of different places and spaces with this conversation today, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah. And you know what I love about it? You're also going to introduce a pop culture, what I call transformative moment. Right now,
absolutely.
When you do that, I think people should know that that moment you're introducing is still appropriate today. But what it did for women, it's hard to put to words. It really is, I think.
It was a game changer. And for a number of reasons. So let's start there, because this is actually what the impetus was for me to bring this topic to our show and to our conversation. I just started something new, which we're also going to talk about later on in the show. A piece of self-care. And as I was in this self-care, I asked myself, or the words came to me, why am I doing this? Because it was a little uncomfortable in the moment. And the words that came in to answer that was, because you're worth it. And I thought, that sounds familiar. I know those words from somewhere. And I remembered that in the early 70s, 1971 to be exact, there was a moment there that changed the entire trajectory of women, the women's movement, women's equality, feminism, women in advertising, women across the board. And the story is this. There was a wonderful young woman. Her name was Ilone Speck, and she was an advertising agent in a time where most of the advertising agents were men. And women in advertising, not only on the creative side, but also on the acting side, had no voice of their own. And even if the product was directed towards women, it was the male actor who would speak on behalf of the woman. And Ilone wasn't going to have any of this for this particular campaign. And this campaign was with L'Oreal, and it was for their, what was the name of that? Hair, I just had it. It was one of their hair colors.
Yes.
It was, one of their hair colors, premier hair color, something like that.
Yeah.
And she came up with this line, because I'm worth it. I'm worth doing something for myself. And when the ad campaign came out, and it was the female actress saying, I'm worth it. I'm worth the cost. I'm worth the expense. I'm worth the time.
Yeah.
That became a rallying cry.
Yeah. You know what was brilliant about that too? L'Oreal and this amazing advertiser, L'Oreal had a problem. The problem was they were charging more, right? Not a whole lot more. And even to this day, some say they do. It could have been pennies, but from a perspective, a buyer perspective, who looks down the row and says $11.99, $12.99, $14.99, right? So they had to go in one of two directions: change the price tag, diminish the quality, or what you're talking about. And don't you think that's bold?
Absolutely. it on so many levels. And well, the thinking might be, but it's just hair color. Like, how is
Oh,
that relevant? We're talking about changing our appearance to fit into some kind of ideal of being a woman. And yes, you could look at it from that perspective, but I think what's more important and what's deeper than that is the empowerment of taking charge of ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, what we do to help ourselves feel empowered and strong and impactful and beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's a really important piece of any way in which we show up in the world, right?
yeah.
And more deeply, that I'm worth it. And then because you're worth it, it triggers something in us. At least it triggers something in me, which is that question of, oh, well, if I'm worth it, what am I willing to do about it?
Yeah.
Right? How am I going to step into my sense of worth? And when it came to the early feminist movement of the 1970s, this is what women were fighting for, right? And still are today. The recognition and the acknowledgement that we are of equal value in the way that we show up in the
Hmm.
world. And that shouldn't be diminished or invalidated by the different ways in which we get treated. And that's why we're still fighting. That's why we're
Yeah.
still feminists, right?
But you know what I loved about that advertising and what she did with that is, to this day, I still use L'Oreal. I don't even look at another option. I don't, because that's stuck. But here's
Mm-hmm.
what happened. It went beyond just the hair color, and it went into the entire campaign of makeup and let's just say products for women.
Mm-hmm.
The whole brand was impacted by because I'm worth it.
Yes, absolutely.
Genius.
Such genius because we're still talking about it, you know, all these years later. And there's a wonderful documentary. It's a TED Talk documentary that was created on Ilon's, basically her deathbed,
Mm,
talking about what that was like for her, what was happening in her life, what was happening in the life of her stepdaughter, the impact of those words, and how it spurred a generation of women and the men who love them to step forward and say, enough is enough already. There's no reason to undervalue half of the population. Why are we doing this? And that then speaks to us as women and our sense of self-esteem and our sense of self-worth, and where are we in the world at large, and then also in our own worlds, and what are we allowing in our lives and in our experiences to undervalue ourselves or devalue ourselves. There's a wonderful line, which is that you treat people how to treat you, right? You allow the treatment of yourself by other people based on how you choose to show up in the world. So if I show up and I say, I'm a badass feminist and don't you dare think about trying to bring me back down, you know, then I will be treated in a different way than if I say, I'm sorry, I'm a woman, and is there anything I can do to help you?
yeah,
Right. And that's what this whole slogan was about. It's that I'm worth it. And then that brings us into what we're going to be talking about today is, what does that look like? How do we address, heal, transform these limiting self-beliefs that our whole culture still embraces, and that on very unconscious levels and very real levels we take on and embrace. And so the hard question that I have for the audience today is, how are you allowing yourself to be treated? Where are those limiting beliefs about what it is to be a woman and what the expectation is of that and how you're showing up in the world? And is
yeah,
there anywhere in that that could do some healing?
yeah. I have a friend of mine who's a master calligrapher. Actually, she was responsible for some of the fonts that we use every day,
Excellent.
right?
Yeah.
That was her thing. She designed fonts before, I guess, AI got involved, but they were perfectly unique and beautiful. And she gave me a book by Walt Whitman called Leaves of Grass. Now, I was learning how to read because I didn't learn how to read, but I was learning how to read as I got older in life. And I came across one part of it, which was, I'm trying to think if it was the beginning, but it became a defining point for my life thereafter. And it also reflected my life up to that point. And this is what we're talking about. This is the quote. It says, "This is what you shall do: love the earth, the sun, and the animals. Re-examine all you have been told at school or church or in any book, and dismiss whatever insults your own soul. And your very flesh shall be a great poem." And it goes on. It's just beautiful verse. Now, why am I bringing that up? Because it represents radical authenticity. It represents critical thinking. And all of what was done with L'Oreal is all of that. You know, what he is saying is, please, I invite you, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say you must, but I invite you to filter out the dogmas, the societal expectations. That one phrase was a a bold statement at a time. And we're still feeling that vibration of that,
We
right?
are, and it is still so relevant because the war on women is still active. Of all the wars in the world, this is the one that is a world war, in my opinion. This is only my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
but this is what I feel to be very true. And that no civilization is going to reach its zenith until it embraces
Mm-hmm.
everyone in the population. And if
Yeah.
half the population is getting paid less or not allowed to work at all, or isn't allowed to have thoughts of their own, or any, and you know, there are degrees of this war, and in some cultures it's very, very evident. Other cultures you might look and say, well, no, it's not us, we're okay, everything's equal here. But is it? It's not yet. But if we want to evolve as a civilization, we need to embrace everybody, both sexes and everything in between, right? And if we look back historically, that's what we see when cultures hit their high point. If there is a renaissance, it includes everybody.
Yeah. I'm writing an article. It's actually turning out to be more of a book, but I'm struck by a couple of things to your point. And I want to bring this up because you brought up the women's movement. And when you and I, or when I was going through it, the greatest disappointments I had in my own personal journey were from other women.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot has been written, a lot of conjecture, but, it does take a village, as Hillary Clinton said. But the other part of that is watching her go through an election where she didn't get the support that many people thought she would get. And it's raising its ugly head in the journey of Caitlin Clark right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you and I could go out there and post like trash and we could do that, but we're not. We're taking everything we've learned, everything we've studied, everything you do to heal upside down, and you're going to share this self-esteem exercise because right now, my concern, especially for somebody who basically single-handedly changed a sport, and yet what we're watching about it is shocking to me, but not shocking. I think because, let me just say this to you. I thought we were beyond the pettiness, the jealousy, right? I thought we had left that into the hands of watching a Carly Fiorina who worked for HP create more products in the time she was there, but then it get a kid. I thought we had gotten beyond that, but we're not. And here in the United States, what we're watching isn't the 250th celebration coming up. Every headline, every newsreel, everything is Caitlin Clark. So, what are we called to do about this? You're going to walk us through this because her self esteem is at risk. And it's not at risk because men are holding her thumb down. I've watched men stand up for her, but the leadership, I call this the leadership ultimatum, the Caitlin Clark effect, what greatness requires from leadership, and what the example you gave is greatness.
Yes, and here's where it starts. Here's where it begins. It begins with the individual, right? the women's movement, feminism, equal rights, all of that is successful when each individual person has done their work around what they think that's supposed to mean for
Yeah.
themselves. And it, divided we fall, right? United we how does that go? United we thrive, and divided we fall. And women have been
Yeah.
divided. There has been a very intentional uh, over many years of creating these divides amongst women and convincing women that they must compete against one another for the scarce resource of the good man. Right? That's a thing. And the power of women gathering is so potent that before we get to the self-esteem, I just want to
Yeah.
exercise. I want to make this clear.
Yeah.
The gathering of women is so potent and can be such a threat to the establishment that in the 1700s in the UK, in England, there was a law on the books that forbade more than three women from gathering together at the water hole, at the well. Think about that. Why? What was the necessity of putting that law in place? What is the threat of women gathering and sharing their stories and realizing that their experiences are not as dissimilar as maybe they have been taught to believe that they are? But
Yeah.
before we can change the whole terrain, the whole landscape of that, we have to do the work on ourselves. So I'm going to
Yeah.
take us through the self-esteem exercise, which I call I am the center shift. Okay.
Please do.
So if you're able, like you're not driving or walking down the road, close your eyes if it's safe to do so. And if you can't, just soften them. Think of your current to-do list. We have one. We all have one, right? All the responsibilities, the people who are counting on you, your tasks. Think about that for a moment. And then physically visualize taking your own name and moving it from the very bottom of the list, if it's even on that list, to the absolute top. Top priority, top billing, your name at the top of your to-do list. Feel that for a moment. And then take a deep breath into your heart space. And you can say this out loud or you can say it in your mind as I'm saying it to you. My presence is required for my life to function. Taking care of me is an act of service to the world. And feel how that settles and lands in your body. Take a deep breath and release it. And notice if there's any tension showing up, maybe between your shoulder blades or in your shoulders where you're shouldering all that responsibility. But when you make yourself your biggest commitment, when you put yourself in the center, not, I mean, we talk about the to-do list, but think of it more as you put yourself in the center of your world. Your well-being has a ripple effect that goes out, just like if you drop a rock into a quiet pond. So if you're in a good state of health and well-being, that ripples out without you having to do anything about it. If you're in a state of constant anxiety because you can't get your to-do list done because you're not taking care of yourself, that also ripples out. That's your responsibility. That's why taking care of yourself and putting yourself in the center is non-negotiable if you want to make these kinds of changes in the world.
Yeah. And Megan, part of this is realizing that we have gone farther down the rabbit hole than we think in creating a pattern in our own existence that requires us to be gentle and kind to ourselves and to start to make that self-care transition one day at a time.
Yeah.
Right? We're starting to see it. We're
Yeah.
starting to see, I was listening to a talk this morning where the speaker made an announcement, and the announcement was that insecurity was an epidemic. Now, this particular person works primarily with women.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to break these things down, you take a look at because you're worth it and the person that did that. And at a time where the voice of confidence was loud and clear, even if we didn't agree with everything, It was
Hmm.
there. And you know what I remember about this? Because let's talk about, the idea of yes to the new beginning and healing. I think the shock for most people during that era, and I think it was around the same time, was the consequences that the National Organization of Women were getting ready to have because they didn't want to include gay women.
Mm.
And the pivotal moment in time was another outspoken short one liner by Gloria Steinem giving a keynote right before March and saying, I'm a lesbian. Now, why does that matter? Well, of course, she was not. But why does that matter? Because what we're talking about is a muscle that we have to remember we have. And don't let it get so atrophied that it's hard to raise the cup, right? So,
Right.
how do we start this new beginning?
Mm.
What
Well,
does it look like?
yeah, I'm going to share some of my personal journey from over the last few months to illustrate what this can look like. And of course, it's different for everybody. We're talking about inclusion and how we need to come together and unite, but we're also acknowledging the differences that we have. And the goal is to have those differences be equal in value and acknowledgement, not all be the same. We're not all homogenous, right? So my shift into saying yes started back last September when a dear friend of mine and former student and former client told me that she was starting a choir for adults who just wanted to get together and sing with one another. Now, I had recently gone through a bit of a voice trauma, if you will, where for the second time in my life, I had been asked to leave a community choir because my voice was not quite good enough for their standards. And this is an interesting tie into the fact that I had to find my voice over the last 30 years, and that's been part of my healing journey, is to find my voice again, because it had been turned off when I was young by things like people saying to me, you shouldn't be singing, right? That can be really impactful. So she said, would you and your husband like to come and join? And before I could say no, the word yes came out of my mouth, right? Before I could think about it, before I could come up with all the excuses and reasons not to do it, I said, yes, let's do this. Let's try this. Because in that moment, then I can start to heal whatever wound still exists by being told by other people that I shouldn't have a voice, right? I shouldn't sing. So that was September. And that was fabulous. And we went all the way through to December. Actually, we went all the way through to April. And I got better, by the way, at singing, which is a fantastic side effect. Um, but then it was, what else can I do now? Now I'm in this energy of, ooh, I want to try something else. And I've always wanted to do archery. So for my daughter's birthday, I gifted her archery lessons, mother-daughter archery lessons. And we got into the archery club and we did archery for 9 weeks. And we learned all kinds of new things and found new muscles we didn't know we had as we were learning it. And it fires up our brains neurologically to do new things, releases chemicals and endorphins in our brains. We know this from the research that gives us that boost, that dopamine or that serotonin boost, and it makes us feel better because we're growing new cellular structures in our brain. But beyond that, it's that feeling of this is new, this is exciting, I can do this. Now, if there are self judgment wounds or self esteem wounds, or you've got a really loud inner critic, when you start to do something new, all of that's going to get triggered. All of that's going to come up to the surface, right? You have the opportunity then in that moment to recognize that's what's happening and doing some work. So the next thing that happened for me is that I met somebody at a festival who has a gym here in Victoria, in Canada, where I live. I've never been a gym person. I don't like being on the floor. People think I should be a yoga person because I'm a healer. I'm not a yoga person. And I thought that my level of self care was fairly high already. I put good food into my body. I make sure that I get out in the garden. I connect with people. I have all of my oils and unctions and potions and lotions and my plant medicines and my essential oils, and I work with them every single day. But what I realized in that moment when I got on the balance beam, he had a low balance beam there, to see how my balance was, I wasn't balanced.
Wow.
And I could feel my body say, now, this is the next thing. You need to say yes to this. And they'd had a free assessment. So I said, okay, sure. I put my name down. And then I kind of forgot about it, as we do, until I got a text that said, hey, it's Clara here at the gym, and come on in for your free assessment. And you better believe that every single one of those, judgments and oh my gosh, and no, I'm going to look silly and I don't look good in those tight gym shorts. And, what if I'm not good enough to do this? What if I don't get it right the first session? What if I look silly or foolish? Like I've done one aerobics class in my entire life, and it was in the 80s. And so I don't know, you remember what the suits were that the women wore in those aerobics
Oh my
classes in the
gosh.
80s? Yeah, I didn't wear one of those and I couldn't follow and I stayed in the back and I just giggled the whole time and they asked me not to come back.
Yeah. No, nobody could do that but Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah.
Hello. Right?
And
Okay.
the
That's
20-minute
Olivia
workout
Newton-John.
girls.
Yeah, that's her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I had already set in motion these shifts, these opportunities to have new experiences, to connect with new people, to put myself out there, even if it was awkward, even if I didn't get it right the first time. I do have a perfectionist streak, just for me. I don't have a perfectionist streak for anybody else, just for myself. So, anyways, I went and I had the assessment. And oh my gosh, there were parts and places in my body that hurt that I knew were painful, but I didn't know how painful because I had become so used to how my body
Yeah.
is that I no longer was aware. And I also knew, and this is really important when you start to make these kinds of shifts, that my saying yes to working with somebody one on one to help me move through the way in which my body has held on to its traumas over my lifetime was going to be hard work. And I don't use the word hard very often, but it is hard work because as we work with our bodies and we start releasing where that cellular memory is being held of that trauma, the trauma surfaces. And
Yeah.
the first time I was with her after the assessment, the next time I went in, we were releasing fascia, which, if you're not familiar with that, it's a lining between the skin and the muscle. And fascia is where trauma gets held. We were releasing fascia through pressure points, and the pain was so intense. It was worse than giving birth because I didn't have the natural, build up to it. It was just a sudden sharp pain as my muscles released. And I cried because of the pain, but I also cried at an emotional level because I recognized what was happening. That crying was the release of some deep trauma that my body had been carrying for many, many years.
Yeah.
And this is important because that's the moment where you're worth it. When I said to me, why am I doing this to myself? Because you're worth it.
Yeah.
Now's
You
the
know,
time.
what a great story. See, that's why you and I love doing shows together because, we have enough book knowledge to do book talk, right? We have enough of
Mhm.
that.
Oh yeah. We can be
But
up here in our heads, no
we
problem.
could be, oh my gosh, I think we did one or two shows like that and then we walked away from it. But what we're talking about is because we have an epidemic right now,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And if people think it doesn't show up, okay, so here, you're going to love this. And then you're going to share an exercise. I wore shorts playing table tennis last night for the first time ever since, well, not for the first time since I was 19 or something. I don't know. Several reasons. I grew up with horrific body image issues, right? I was always teased as a kid. I never looked like my two sisters. And then in COVID, I get two knee replacements. And what do you think my knees look like with that scar? Right. So I made up this story, but I looked at this show. Now, I play at a club where uh, I got to give him a lecture on what air conditioning really is. So that's another show. And by the way, I left early because I couldn't even breathe in there, but I put them on and they weren't big floppy. They were kind of snug, right?
Yep.
Now, I will say I did compensate. I wore an oversized shirt because I'm still me. Hello. and it's a work in progress.
Right.
But that child part of me that was abused physically in Catholic boarding school had to heal.
Yeah.
And if you don't think putting on those shorts and walking in there, scar, yeah, I got a 10-inch scar on each knee. If you don't think for 1 minute walking in there and doing that was a healing moment, you're going to demonstrate to us why it was, but what we can do, that childlike nature of who we are.
And I love our parallels, Pat, because as we were planning for this show and we were chatting, we found ourselves in a very similar place of taking that level of self-care to the next level, like really getting deep in the body. Because this body is so magnificent and so beautiful, and it's the only one we get in this life. So take care of it. For goodness sakes, you don't have to inevitably become decrepit as you age. I sure as hell, so, pardon me, heck, I'm not going to do that. So I'm taking it to the next level. But your story about your shorts is so perfect. That's the exact experience I had last week when I went out and got myself a pair of tight little culotte thingies, the things that people wear to the gym. I don't have
Oh,
that
yeah,
in my
yeah,
wardrobe.
yeah.
But I got a
Oh.
black pair. They're super tight, show off my booty, which is, it's a good size. And then when I walked down the street, I know that nobody's looking at me. I know no one cares what I'm wearing. That's the 90-10 rule that I have. 90% of the time, no one actually cares what you're doing, what you're thinking. That's a whole you thing. We did a whole show on that, the one on
Yeah.
judgment, right? Um, but what I noticed is that I actually felt good. I found myself walking taller. Like, hey, I got these tight little things on and I'm okay. This is all right. I'm not feeling too self-conscious. so, so there we are having this a similar parallel experience. But yes, it does come back to those early childhood messagings that we received that we carry with us unconsciously until we become conscious of them. And to your point of it was this one thing. I just put on a pair of shorts. There's that ripple effect. That is a healing moment. This is why we say radical change with ease. It doesn't have to be a great big huge production. It can be one thing a day that you challenge yourself on.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take you through this exercise that
Thank
I
you.
call childlike alibi. All right. And so again, just let yourself soften. Close your eyes or keep them open. That's entirely up to you, but just soften. I want you to think of one thing you loved doing when you were 10 years old. 10 is a significant time in our lives. That's why we choose that number. So, inviting you to think of one thing that you loved to do when you were 10 years old. Were you climbing trees or drawing, dancing in the living room with no worries, singing loudly? Your inner child is waiting for you to bring that energy back to your adult self. Right now, give yourself an unconditional joy alibi. I invite you to commit to doing one small thing this week, completely badly, entirely off key, or totally imperfectly, simply because it will make your soul smile. All right. Your
Yeah.
worth, this is the messaging of this exercise. Your worth is not tied to your performance. Notice where in your body that awareness lands. For me, I feel it right here. I feel it right in the center of my chest. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. That means I don't have to be perfect.
I got it in my back.
Yeah, that's another great place. That's often where it ends up. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, you know how important this is? And I want to talk to every one of you listening, women and men. But here's what I want to say. Megan couldn't be clearer that this is progress and not perfection. Why am I saying that? Okay, true confessions. It shows up. Now, I did I did show up in the shorts, my Costco shorts. I did show up and I played. And I played a guy that I have played. We have a running joke of the day I beat him. And we played, and I beat him the first two games. But then he got annoyed. that I was I was taking too much time and resting.
Mhm.
I was resting. Now, Linda says I should have just said to him, dude, do you know how old I am? But then I said to her, yeah, I should have told him I was blah, blah, blah. And she says, you're not that age. Where the hell did you get that age from? I said, well, how old am I? I'm telling you, it's not in my brain. But you know what I didn't do? This is why I want to say progress, Megan, just like with you. And I think what you referred to is you bought a skirt. Aren't they called skirt, those little dress things, something
Oh,
like that?
no, no, not a skirt. No, these are why I don't know why I have a blockage because I guess I haven't worn them for a while. They're like
They're,
leggings. They're leggings. That's the
oh,
word.
they're leggings. Oh yeah. No,
Leggings.
I can't do the
Yeah,
leggings yet.
the
Okay, the
tight the
shorts are
tight
short. Yeah,
leggings.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Linda's the legging chick. Linda's got great legs, so she can do leggings. But here's what happened to me. I stopped him and I went and got drink. It was 90 in there. But then he kept pressuring me. He kept starting without waiting for me.
Hmm.
And so here's the insecurity that I want people to be aware of and how to find the courage to say, because I'm worth it to everything. What I didn't do is stopped him. I had beat him 2 games and I was getting ready to win the match until he got so angry at me for rushing. He said, what are you trying to do? And I took the bait.
Hmm.
Why? Because we take the bait. We haven't learned. Yes, me. Hello, people, including me. I'm a work in progress. Because when people that we think are in authority or better than us do something like that, whether it's Stephanie White deciding to jerk Caitlin Clark's chain around, whether it's other people, lack of support for her, whether or not she has the courage to walk off like she did, whether it's her being on the ground on a court, being surrounded by 3 players, one with a fist in her neck and the other one. The best part of that Caitlin Clark thing is when she tried to get up and kicked somebody out of the way. Why? Because sometimes, Megan, we have to do that. And I don't mean physically harm somebody, but we have to take a stand and go to the next level. So, what did we learn? Today, we learned about self esteem from you. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about why what I just explained, why what you just explained. We had to crack open cells in our body to heal them. You get it? We literally did. Now, I couldn't do it in the moment. I just didn't have the tools. I didn't have you with me because, honey, look, if you'd have been there with me, you'd have called me over, you'd have called a timeout and said, what the are you doing? Right?
I
But I,
may have. I may have.
but I was ready for this show today.
Hmm.
So when we come back, we're going to talk about what the cells' jobs are in our body. What do they remember? Are they for us or are they against us? But before we go to break, how do people work with you? How do they find out, you know, how to reach you? What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, a great place to start would be at my website, which is meganedge.ca. There's all kinds of resources on there. My blog is on there. Our radio show is on there. There's also links then to my YouTube channel where there's lots of great resources and ways that you can learn about the way that I do my work. And then if it feels like a yes, this is the woman who I want to work with, then you can send me an email. You can book through the website. You can also find me on, let's see, where am I? I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Substack now. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, pretty much too many places. And we
Everywhere,
can do
Megan.
this, we can do this work in person if you happen to be in my beautiful part of the world, or we
Yeah.
can do it from anywhere in the world.
And thank you to Zoom and COVID for really allowing us to do that. Let's take a 30-second break. That's it. When we come back, the haunting and the daunting cellular memory, why Megan Edge is the one to help you reprogram them. We'll be right back.
Hello, beautiful. In a world that can sometimes feel so disconnected, coming home to your heart is the most profound journey. Whether you're navigating loss, grief, transition, or simply seeking clarity, you don't have to do it alone. This is why I created the Heart's Journey Healing Hearts Oracle Cards and Guidebook boxed set. It's more than just a box of oracle cards. It's a complete toolkit that helps you connect to your heart's wisdom through the shared experiences of heart transformation. For the month of June, I'm gifting you a complimentary copy of the Heart's Journey box set when you book in with me for a 60 or 90-minute healing session, whether online or in person. Let's step into your healing together. Reach out to me at meganedge.ca or email me at megan@meganedge.ca, and let's book your session, work together towards your healing, and gift you the Heart's Journey Healing Hearts Oracle Cards and Guidebook.
Are you ready to listen to your soul? Discover the power of pausing and turning in on Our Soul Whisper with Kathy Belmont and Dr. Pat. This sacred show offers a safe space.
Wonderful, and welcome back, everybody. So just before the break, Pat was sharing with you that we were going to talk a little bit more about our cells, which might seem like an odd topic when we're looking at trauma and healing, unless you understand the way in which trauma impacts us in our bodies. And this is part of our conversation about being worth it, right? Understanding and recognizing the relationship that you have with this magnificent body that carries you through your life. Trauma, if not released on or near the moment of its happening, stays with us. And I'm going to share something kind of radical with you. Not kind of. I'm going to share something radical with you. This is a radical belief that I have. The aches and pains that you experience as you age are not a natural part of the aging process. They are an accumulation of traumatic events, both emotional and physical and spiritual, that you have experienced in your body that are currently unresolved, unhealed, and your beautiful, precious body is holding them for you until you are ready, willing, and able to do the work. That's a bold statement because everything in our world, in our culture, tells us that it's just age. You're just getting old, honey. That's what it is. Happens to everyone, but it doesn't happen to everyone. Jack Rabbit Johansson is a man who was a mentor of mine when I was a young girl. Not that I ever met him. He was much older than I was, and he didn't live anywhere near me, but he was pivotal for me because at 104 or 103 or however old it was, he was still cross-country skiing every day of the winter. Every day. There are so many examples of people who defy what we consider to be that natural aging process. And we understand this. There's lots of research being done about this, the blue zones and all of that. It's not rocket science to figure out how to do it, right? But if you've lived your whole life with a certain set of beliefs, not only about what it means to age as a woman or as a man, but beliefs about yourself and what your worth is, and whether or not you can actually make time in your day to do something to take care of yourself. If you've got limiting self-beliefs around that and your body's holding on to that trauma, it's going to show up. It basically what's happening is the pain that you're feeling, the discomfort is your body trying to communicate with you that, hey, there's something over here. You know, this chronic frozen shoulder we've had for 12 years, something is here that needs a different kind of approach than putting Voltaren on it or taking opioids to manage the pain. The pain is a signal. Those signals are in your cells. What happens when you release that is that your body softens. And what it does is it softens into its strength, right? You could be the strongest person on the planet, but if you are not softening into your strength, that strength can only carry you so far.
Yeah. You know, sidebar, Serena Williams played at Wimbledon. She lost. And I have a theory about why she lost. It may not be true. But here she was, excited to play. And from the minute that they allowed her to play on an exemption card, she got beaten down by pretty much every press docket player everything from her taking GLP-1, and she played and she lost and she injured herself. Now, I'm not working with her. I don't know for sure, but I've been her.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I was going to say something, the mental angst that one goes through when you're in the spotlight
Yeah.
and you look around and you think, wow, I wonder, why aren't people supporting me? She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have her dad. Why aren't we being supported? And the agony on her face that I saw wasn't from losing a game. It was from losing a fight that she had never lost in her life.
Yeah.
And that's the public. And, to your point, that's a cellular hurt issue. That's a hurting that goes on with you. So, what do we do about that? What do we do about that backlash when we choose ourselves? Because guess what? She did that. And
Mm-hmm.
I am waiting for Caitlin Clark to choose herself. I'm waiting for her to do it. We have seen so many people not do it,
Yeah.
and so many people that have, but we just don't know the difference, do we?
Yes. And this is where it becomes, it's not just about you, right? When you say yes to yourself and you choose actions that support a different kind of relationship that you have with yourself, positive changes, you do become a new kind of a person. And this is something that's really important to talk about as we look at, okay, so good. I've said yes, and I'm doing all these really cool things, and I'm looking after my body in different ways that I've never done before, and I'm feeling really good about these changes. That ripple effect I talked about earlier, that goes out to the people around you. And wouldn't it be fantastic, like you're saying, Pat, if everybody could be supportive, say this is great. I love what you're doing. Or if you're having an off moment, or you've got that trauma at that cellular level of the betrayal or whatever it is, that in that moment there's somebody there to pick you up and say, it's okay, I've got you, right? What can happen is that some of the people around you don't like these changes in you.
Nope.
They don't like that you're becoming somebody they don't recognize. It makes them feel uncomfortable. Now, let's be clear, that discomfort is theirs because your well being, you're saying yes to your well being, you're saying, yes, I'm worth it, and I'm going to make these changes and these commitments to myself that are non negotiable, triggers something in them.
Sorry about that. Um, but that was my alarm going off because I got triggered by what you just said. Uh,
Okay.
the bottom line is each and every one of us has a spot that requires healing. Today, we're taking one topic.
Mm-hmm.
One. We're
Mm-hmm.
not taking, look, I got a pizza in front of me. I'm only having 2 slices today, right? But these are pivotal.
Yeah.
This is a conversation that points to an epidemic that we are not talking about now. We're not having this conversation. And I'm not here to criticize that. I'm Annie Lennox in her song Why. See, Megan, you and I are asking ourselves why? Why are we like this? Why are you? And what can you do? That's what you shared today. This isn't about blame or shame, but it's about helping people take a step that could literally change the trajectory of their lives.
Yes. And in some situations, save their lives. Think about that for a moment. Saying yes to yourself and then doing a thing that reflects that yes to yourself changes the chemistry in your body. Literally, it changes the chemistry in your body. But when we don't have the support of the people around us, when we make these changes, and I'm sure that many of the listeners have gone through this, especially if let's talk about addiction just for a quick second. once you leave that addiction behind, whether it's alcohol or drugs, you're also leaving behind an entire culture and a community of people who shared that experience with you. And when you say no to that and you come into your own strength around that, you lose people. You lose people. My former husband, as we were trying to figure out our marriage and our relationship, at one point he said to me, "You're not the woman I married." This was 20 years later. I said, "Yeah, thank goodness I'm not the woman you married." I mean, she was a great woman. I loved her. She was fantastic, but evolution is part of the program here. Evolution is part of the program. We come here to evolve. I'm not the same woman I was at 27. At 57, I'm a very different person. There's lots of things that are similar and the same, but I've done a lot of work and I've done a lot of growth and a lot of changing over the years. And I'm not that 27-year-old woman who got married to him. I'm not the 33-year-old who had her first daughter, or the 36-year-old who had her second daughter, or the 35-year-old who had a miscarriage and nearly died. I'm not that same woman anymore because I'm saying, yes, this change can happen. But what, or that is not, it can happen, this change is required for evolution. And in my experience, each time I have taken that evolutionary step to say something different or to do something new, I've lost people. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
painful. There's pain in that. There's grief in that. And so when you step forward and say, yes, I'm worth it and I'm going to do these things and I'm going to make these changes, be prepared that some people are not going to love that.
Yeah.
Some people will leave your life because of it. And
Megan, it's a hero's journey.
yeah,
I really need to say this. It's a
yes,
hero's journey, and I'll
yes.
tell you why. I'm always amazed that I was able to take the recovery journey I did. You want to know why? What's wrong with you? Why aren't you going to have a drink? I mean,
Mhm,
you just have one. And then friends that look and you say, "Oh, you're not our friend anymore." Why? Because I'm not dropped down dead in the street drunk. We're not friends anymore. Well, of course we're not, because I don't want to be that person. But we do change. But I really need to point out, I didn't do it alone. And
mhm,
what you're offering people is a handout to get a lift up.
mhm.
Sometimes you need a lift up. You may be hit, fell down on your bum, not quite sure why you can't get up, but you need a hand up to get up. And what we're talking about is a body of work you've done. And part of that is it shows up in the Healing Hearts Oracle cards you created. See, you're not just talking, you've done some things. And
Mhm.
you're actually going to pull a card today, aren't you?
I am going to pull a card today. Yes, yes, I am. Um, well, should we move into that before we do the boundary anchor? What do you think?
I think you should do the boundary
I think so
anchor,
too.
and then we just bring it home with the mystery card.
Not one that we looked at beforehand.
Yes, that's what we mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we didn't pull the card and do the whole show around the card.
That's how powerful those cards are, however, but we'll
I
get to
know
that
it.
in a moment. I do want to share this exercise because it's key to this piece of the self change, which is where other people are going to get their own triggering around their own self-worth and their own self-esteem and what they're willing to do to look after themselves. And they will try to bring you back to the person that they knew you as, because that's where they're comfortable. All right. So that's a boundary issue. So this is the boundary exercise. So what I would like to do is to invite you to think of somebody in your life who reacts with irritation, guilt, or passive aggression when you choose to say no or to put yourself first. Just let that person, or it could be more than one, just let them pop into your mind. Now imagine them standing in front of you. Place your hand firmly over your solar plexus. This is your seat of personal power. Breathe deeply and hold. And feel the strength building into your solar plexus. And now silently say to them, or say to them, I love you, but I'm no longer available to shrink so that you can feel comfortable. I'm allowed to evolve. Feel that. And now notice how anchoring in your core, when you say that, prevents you from absorbing their discomfort. Because it's theirs, it's not yours. And then take a deep breath and release it. And just notice. This is a lot of the work that I do, Pat, is about inviting people to observe rather than fall into what they're feeling, right? To move into the observer role. Because when we can observe what's happening to us, we can have a communication or a conversation with that instead of letting it run the show. All right. So we did pull a card, and the card that came up, and we did pull it intuitively, not
Yes,
intellectually,
yes.
is this beautiful card called Heart Trap. And for those of you who are looking at the video, what you're seeing is a spider web covered in frost on the edge of a tree. And the message of the card is that you may feel trapped by love. It may seem impossible to move out of a relationship because of someone else's complexities. There are solutions. Take step towards well-being with others' help. And then I'll take it just a little bit deeper as we come to the top of the hour. I found this spiderweb heart on an old growth tree in a wooded area on Main Island in Canada. Most of the surrounding area had been logged many times, indicating old wounds on the land that have not healed. When I saw this web, I knew that it was for the Healing Hearts Oracle cards, and I thought I knew its message, but I was wrong. The web's message isn't about connecting and weaving our lives together. Instead, it is this: you can each feel helpless in love, whatever that relationship is. You are each capable of staying in relationships you know are no longer healthy for you. You stay for fear of safety or other people's judgments. You stay for what could have been. You stay for a love that once was. You stay because you're told you cannot leave. No one has the right to keep you where you no longer wish to be. Step out of entanglement and seek help. Help is critical in any time of transition. I'm always grateful to the people who crossed my path as I moved into my heart's journey. I couldn't have done it alone, and neither should you. Be safe and seek help.
Wow, that is powerful beyond words. Megan, one last thing. How may people reach out to you, work with you, all of the above? And those oracle cards you created. So I want to make sure people know
Yes.
that.
Yes,
Okay.
I did. I wrote the oracle cards. I wrote the books that go with them. It's a box set
Yep.
with the guidebook and all the ways to work with oracle cards, and then each card itself. And these are images of hearts that I found in nature as I was transitioning out of one of those kinds of relationships that I just shared in
Mm-hmm.
that. And it was because I was changing and I was saying yes to
Mm-hmm.
new things and I was evolving, and my partner at the time was not. And it was radical change. You can
Yeah.
reach me through Transformation Talk Radio on my host page. You can also reach me through my YouTube channel, through Substack, through email, through my website, meganedge.ca. All of that information will be in the show notes. There's also a 20% off coupon for anybody who wishes to purchase
Oh,
their own copy
great.
of the Heart's Journey Healing Hearts Oracle cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And for those of you out there, maybe today is the day you put on those tights or you put on those shorts. Maybe this is your day to demonstrate you're worth it. Thank you all for tuning us in. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Because
Thank you for joining us today on Playing on the Edge Radio. If you felt seen, supported, or inspired, take a moment to subscribe, share this episode with someone you care about, and continue the journey with us. For more healing resources, to book a healing session, and to learn more about Megan's work, including the Heart's Journey, Healing Hearts Oracle Cards and Guidebook, visit meganedge.ca. And remember, healing isn't something you have to wait for. It begins the moment you choose to come home to yourself.